You're listening to Beast Over Burden, powered by Barbell Logic.
We're Niki and Andrew, your personal professional coaches.
We help you take control of your fitness through hard but doable training and nutrition practices that fit your busy life.
Build a stronger, healthier version of yourself with lifelong habits. Hey everybody, welcome to Beast Over Burden, powered by Barbell Logic. I'm your host, Niki Sims. With me is Andrew Jackson.
Howdy.
Well, welcome to probably one of our last episodes on the specific theme of physical freedom, although this is definitely going to come up many times, just so you know. But as we wrap up this discussion, we wanted to make sure and leave you with a pretty clear model of what that would look like for you to help you see, like, do I have it or do I not have physical freedom? And then the rest of this series that you've listened to so far will help you actually take the steps to achieve it. But I think physical freedom is going to look a bit different for everybody. Your specific version, Andrew, might be a little bit different than mine, which is going to be slightly different from our clients, I'm sure. But how do we know if, how do we turn this vague concept into something that's a bit more defined?
Well, if you go back to the beginning, we started with the importance of knowing what you want. And that's why physical freedom might look different for different people, because different people want different things. The thread that I believe is common is somebody that's physically free is clear about what they want, and their actions and their behaviors are aligned, enabling them to do what they want with their bodies. That could be somebody that wants to be a 308 competitive powerlifter. That could be somebody that's a marathon runner, or it could be somebody who just likes to feel comfortable in their clothes and able to be physically active in whatever capacity they want. We also talked about some markers along the way that are probably conducive to more of a long-term health approach. I mean, being a 308-pound powerlifter is probably not a long-term healthy state to be in.
Yeah.
But if you, for a short period of time, want to go up to compete at that, and then you can come back down, be at a place where you feel comfortable and then you're able to accomplish your goals, I think that is physical freedom.
It sounds like there's definitely a long-term component, like there's a long-term vision. There's a health component to it. Even the example you just had is a great one, is like, maybe it's a short-term goal to get to a certain weight class, see what numbers you hit competitively. And then on the other side of that, you go back down and weight to, a waist circumference that may be a little bit healthier, but there's still a plan. And when I do think that health has to be taken into account, because if you're sick, then it doesn't feel as physically free. And while we can't control everything in that realm, there are some things we can do. Like, there are many bad health outcomes that have to do with a certain waist to hip ratio. So that seems like one thing that we can keep track of and keep some parameters on. So I would say that the long-term vision is mindful of your actual health.
Yeah, I guess I would frame it more that someone that's physically free knows what they want, understands those trade-offs, and is able to, again, align their behaviors with their goals. An example of not being physically free might be somebody who's convinced that they need to weigh as much as possible so they can lift as much as possible, and they just feel stuck chasing more body weight to put more weight on the bar, and not understanding the principles of long-term productive strength training in a way that doesn't require that they just kind of mindlessly consume significant excess amount of calories. So a lot of what we talked about were also principles behind the whys that enable people to make the decision to go up or down or maintain while continuing to train in a consistent manner. I think a lot of what we talked about in the series is not just what's the optimal or the way to train, but principles behind training that enable people to blend it into their lives, because we think strength and nutrition are and cardiovascular health are really important things to being physically free. To your point, if you're becoming a sick aging phenotype, like Dr. Sullivan says, you're probably not going to be able to live the life that you want. So I think there's some health parameters in there, but I think if you want to do, a bodybuilding show, which people generally correlate with being healthy, but for some period of time, you're making a conscious choice to be at an unhealthily low body fat percentage, but it's in alignment with your goals. And that, when your goals change, you would shift those behaviors.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting. Like if you're sitting there wondering if you have your why established, you can imagine you're having a conversation with yourself. And you can even do this like in a journal entry. You can state a goal and then do the 5 whys. Why is that important to you? Why is that important to you? Like see what your answers are to multiple layers of whys. And maybe if it's a goal, like the examples you just gave of gaining a lot of weight or losing a lot of weight, follow that up with, and what after that? What about after that? Because I think it still is great to want to do something that maybe has a significant trade-off, and then think about what you want to do after, because it's like you have a whole lifetime to be physically free. And I think that your behaviors can become maybe easier to get aligned with when you have a long-term vision. So for defining the vision, I would say go through the whys. And if it is something that's kind of on the extreme side, but still an accomplishment that's really important to you, ask yourself, what about after? And see what comes up there.
Having gone through these series, do you feel like you have physical freedom?
I know what it feels like. And I know when I'm pushing myself into a zone where I'm just like, I don't like where I am right now. So I think I do, because I know that I am the one who is responsible for it all. And I do not feel like things happen to me. I feel like I know what to do to point myself in a direction where I truly want to go. I know when I'm not doing those things, and I know I'm the one who's responsible for making those changes. I would say yes.
How much cheese can you consume before you no longer feel physically free?
I don't know the exact weight. But from recent experience, it's definitely less than a half a block of Gouda. Why do you ask?
Well, I mean, the reason I ask about the cheese is because to me, that's a great example. A small scale physical freedom choice where it would not be a long-term sustainable thing to eat large quantities of cheese every single day. But because you understand the trade-offs and how to recover from or, transition.
I accept the voluntary hardship of the cheese sometimes. Sometimes I do not want that.
And, that it comes with a little bit of a price to pay, but it's worth it. And you enjoy it and you work through the voluntary hardship and then move on.
Yes. How about you? Would you say?
I do. I feel what I like about where things are at right now is I feel like I'm much more patient with choices that I make or goals that I have. I no longer feel like I'm failing to have a certain physique that I think I'm shooting on myself about. And it's more that I go through cycles of checking in with what it is that I want and whether my choices are aligned with that and make small adjustments. And I feel the same on the training side. So body composition, I normally am thinking about total calories essentially and whether my activity level. I think I notice a change when I'm getting 2 to 3 walks a day. Tends to help.
Yeah.
And with my training, I feel less pressure that any given session has to be hitting certain numbers. And I feel much more comfortable training curious and doing the work and feeling successful from putting in the work to a process and less pressure to have a certain outcome at any given point in time. Whereas a lot of my motivation in the past was hitting a certain number on the scale, hitting a certain number on the measuring tape, hitting a certain weight on the bar, and only feeling success when I accomplished the goal versus now focusing more on the habits and the process and feeling that I have margin for a range of choices that still move me in the direction that I want. Largely because I understand the principles that we've been talking about on this series.
Yeah.
That's why I think that it's useful is that if you understand the principles and you're clear on what you want and you give yourself time to get there, it's very manageable and I feel physically free when I'm in that mindset.
There's a lot of peace when you have many choices and you end up feeling more in control.
Right.
And I think that feels like freedom, where you can still go the direction that you want to go. You never feel really cut off from it, but you can understand how things change when you have a good perspective of time and the things you can do to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we also talked about a range of criteria that allow for a lot of room in what it tactically can be and still contribute to moving in the direction that you're talking about. So when we're talking about hard sets and we're talking about how to get enough mechanical tension to drive hypertrophy, that can come from a wide range of weights, a lot of different types of exercises, and take pressure off of feeling like you have to do it just this one right way and enable you to, I hope, get into training or to start training without feeling like this huge weight that it has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
There are, like we talked about, something is better than nothing. That's bar number one to get over. Some things are better than other things, yes, and nothing works forever. But if you can get into the gym, you start doing something, accumulate hard sets, and fuel your body to recover from that training, then you're doing 90% of the work. And then as you hit sticking points, of course, hire a coach, call us. We can help you solve those problems, but
Exactly what we're for. Yeah.
at least you're in doing the work, doing hard sets, building muscle, practicing the skill of moving your body and fueling your body to train. I hope that's what people took away most is some concrete things to try to make their training productive, give it some direction, and enable people to set their behaviors in a way that's moving them towards their goals.
Yeah.
And to do it in a way that you can fit it into your life, not
Right. That's
like
what I was just
white
thinking.
knuckle
Yeah.
90-minute sessions 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah. Like you're not having to sacrifice the rest of your life to go to the gym because that will make it unsustainable. Yeah. It's got to fit forever.
In this recording this series, I hit a couple of moments where I approached it different today than I did probably 5 or 10 years ago, where I was not performing well in terms of weight on the bar. Knee was bugging me, travel, back was bugging me. I was getting sick, but I kept showing up and I kept doing work. And one of the interesting things that I noticed was it felt like it came out of nowhere that all of a sudden my strength was back. But it's that I think it just never left because I was doing, even though I wasn't hitting the exact numbers that I would normally expect myself to hit, I was still doing hard sets, still being consistent, still training. And then whatever the injury was or whatever the thing is that was holding me back cleared out and my body could recover enough to perform again. It was there.
Yeah.
without it needing to be this big, long, like build back up. It was just kind of muted for a while.
Yeah, I was thinking of what it looks like working with a client who starts from a position or starts from a place where I don't think either of us would describe them as being physically free, and they wouldn't themselves. And then to see how things look for them, a year down the road when their mindset is so different. They are appreciative of the things that they're able to do outside the gym, and they decide to go do those things, after they've invested in creating their habits and putting on muscle, hitting a roadblock, understanding that there's more to the picture and continuing to go forward. I think that's a really cool thing to see with someone.
Yeah, I have a client that comes to mind when you're describing that. I think that's a great way to frame it. I could see, having worked with him for about a year and a half now, the difference from the beginning to the early days of training to now, when if he missed a rep or had a bad day or the scale popped up a couple of pounds, he was in, I don't want to say panic mode, but he was frustrated. He was disappointed. A lot of emotions would show up in the workout. Like, oh,
Yeah.
and a lot of emotions and a lot of questions
Yeah.
around, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to fix? What do I need to change? Why is this happening? Along with a lot of upset emotions, frustration, anger, disappointment. And now, a year and a half later, if a day happens like that, he's like, just wasn't there today. I'll come back. I'm going to hit this next week. I think it was just a bad day. Or, things just were a little bit off, kind of, asking for some feedback on what he could focus on next time, but not worried about it. Just kind of rolling with the punches and keeps showing up.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing less negative self-talk. I'm hearing less doubt. I'm hearing less negative emotion. I'm hearing more positive self-talk, more emotional flexibility, or like just ability to experience a wider range of things happening in his training, or on, his scale will go up or down a couple of pounds here and there. And it's not a big reaction. He sticks with the plan because he knows, like we've been talking about, his behaviors. He's now focused more on the behaviors being in alignment with what he wants.
Yeah.
And that's what he's demonstrating. And that's where he's then able to stay, I think what you said, peace. Like, he's more at peace because he knows his actions are in alignment with where he's going. And if the day-to-day outcome is up or down, it doesn't really seem to affect him as much. And oh, by the way, he's lost 50 pounds and he's put 100 pounds on almost all of his lifts.
Yeah.
And so I see him getting fired up about the results too. Like, he's obviously been able to make some huge changes and went from not lifting at all to squatting in the high threes, deadlifting in the mid fours, benching in the mid 200s for reps, while losing inches off his waist and pounds on the scale.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's given him this totally different vision for himself, for where he wants to go. And he's talking on the order of 8 years, 10 years. This is where I want to be. This is who I want to be. That will be a reflection of my behaviors. And he's very bought into that image and that person that he wants to be, and that he knows he is, and that he's excited about his body and what he's able to do and who he's able to demonstrate, who he's able to show his kids that he is as well, and his wife. And I think that's where you start to see the power of that shift in mindset. Do you have any clients that come to mind that have changed like that?
Yeah.
Thinking about like one of your teen clients you have, seems like she's changed a lot.
Yeah, I have some that are there and some that aren't. And the ones who are there, they just are training. They're always training. And when they're frustrated, it's because it's usually something outside in life is making their training harder than usual. And it's really big stuff. It's like someone in their family getting really sick, or they had to travel for work. And so it's like stuff that is kind of just like, man, I have to do this. And I'm just kind of bummed that it's impacted my training, you know? And then I'm comparing it to the frustration that I see in someone who's not as far along, where it's like they think they're consistent and they really believe that they're doing everything right. And then when you really look at it, it's like they're not really consistent. They're not learning how to eat. They're not making the changes that they say they want to make. And then it builds up and they're frustrated. And so it's, yeah, the way I see it is some people really learn how to take responsibility for everything. And those who are still learning how to become physically free, I think they don't know how to support their training outside the gym. And so then when training inside the gym doesn't go right, it's only the training fault. It's the programming's fault. And there's so much more to it, you know? So like the sources of frustration vary with someone who's, we'll call it a novice to physical freedom. Yeah. But I think, that emotion of frustration is, I don't think it's a bad thing in the beginning because it shows that you're really interested in what you're doing. But that emotion, I think, is a good time to, look at, okay, what am I actually doing? These are the reps that you also have to develop. You have to get reps at seeing the big picture, taking responsibility for what you can, and then making changes that get you towards where you want to be. And so when that comes up, that is your chance to develop the skills to become physically free.
I agree. I think that's an excellent point that we talked about, I think, in the setbacks episode, where I see every injury I've ever had or every life circumstance that's ever come up are learning opportunities for my training. And it's only because I've gone through those for myself and for many of my clients that I think I've developed that range of approaches to solve the problems that come up with training for a long part of your life. And that's where I think a coach adds so much value, is that they've built that set of experiences and strategies that they can just give to you as if you've gone through all of those scenarios 100 times.
Yeah.
And it's a physical freedom enabler to have somebody who's gone through all those iterations, setbacks, injuries, circumstances that can seamlessly modify your training to roll with those punches.
Yeah.
Or to work around whatever the setback is. I mean, I'll just speak selfishly for myself. That's what I've learned. I feel like my coaching philosophy is sort of an amalgamation of all the different coaches I've ever worked with, along with my own personal learning and philosophy that also then feeds into my own training and my own mindset.
For sure.
But I think that's actually a powerful way also to work towards physical freedom, is that whatever that thing is that's feels like friction in your training, to see it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah. That's another big skill of someone who is more physically free, is they see many paths. Like we've just talked about this a few minutes ago. And when there's friction, it means that you aren't seeing the other paths, most likely. So yeah, that's a great learning opportunity. Yeah. I think I've used this analogy before where a coach is like, it's like you're on a road trip together, you're driving and your coach is in the passenger seat with the map. And sometimes you just take different routes. The detour, you take a different route, but you never just get out of the car and let the car crash.
Right.
You just keep going. Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
I keep wanting to do like a summary list of everything we talked about, but I think that's not possible to try to distill.
And knowing us, we would just talk about each one again in full.
Yeah. To distill like 20 hours of thinking. But maybe we'll have to dump it into ChatGPT and provide a bulleted list of keys to physical freedom.
Yeah. Well, next week you're going to hear some Q&As from us. So Stay tuned. I'm excited to hear what people are curious about and excited to answer some questions from everybody.
Yeah, if somebody wants to get their question in the list, how do they do that?
Send us an email, please. podcast@barbell-logic.com. You can find out where Andrew gets his pants that he lifts in, how he cooks lunch, where he gets his groceries delivered from.
How to make
lots of
a
stuff.
good creamy recipe.
That's me.
The Ninja Creamy.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Please check out barbelllogic.com/experience if you want to learn more about what it'd be like to have a coach/co-pilot. We'd love to answer your questions, and we'll see you here next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.